over again, and we're living it at 24 weeks. And so in our mind, we're sitting there going, we're at 24 weeks. We didn't even get to 25 and a half. And not that it A always equals B, but in our experience, 25 and a half ended up with the outcome that we had with Cooper. So we're living in the space of like, how do we just sort of process that? And I remember, because in those particular rooms, right, because you never know if you're going to have a baby right away. So there's an isolette in there, except this one is the open air warmer one. And I was like, well, this one needs to go. First of all, I don't need to stare at this. And it's the wrong one anyway. So I was like, I was being a little sassy. I probably shouldn't have been. The hospital was really great, especially because they knew, we were very quick to tell them about Cooper and everything. So they knew where we were going with that and kind of our mindset that we were in with all this. And then we learned that she wasn't in active labor. It was the previa. She was in the antepartum floor for about a week. And then she essentially was put on bed rest until 37 weeks when we had Scotty.
Wow.
So yeah, no, we have learned in our life, nothing is easy in life. That is for sure.
That is for sure. I appreciate you speaking about the pregnancy trauma because, like you mentioned, people don't talk about it. Unfortunately, I went through very similar things. So, with my medical background, my goal was I had to get past 12 weeks because, not that it always happens, but it was like, that's like you said, that's the first marker. I get past that. When most miscarriages happen, then we should be good. And unfortunately, that's when everything went downhill for me as well. And I ended up bleeding and having preterm labor throughout the second trimester up until I had my son at 23 weeks. And, I had subsequent pregnancies afterwards that unfortunately I ended up with a miscarriage.
I'm sorry.
Well, thank you. And the second pregnancy mimicked what my son Williams was. So I completely understand what you're saying. And, people that haven't been through it and that have that magical story, if there is such a thing, that they get pregnant when they want and they have these beautiful 8-pound babies at 40 weeks, they don't fully understand and they never will.
Yeah. And I think too, one of the things that we learned out of all this is that, there's these statistics out there. 1 in 4 pregnancies ends up in a miscarriage.
Right.
And no one seems to really talk about that type of stuff. 1 in 10 babies are going to see a NICU. No one seems to talk about that. So when we're talking about just the amount of people in just America, right, who experience something in this realm, our big thing was we're like, why do we feel like we're the first ones experiencing this? And part of it is as you go through it, you realize, especially like with the NICU, you don't really want to talk about it. For us, we talk about it because it helps us sort of, we call it parenting Cooper, right? Like it helps us keep his memory alive. We feel like it's super important. But we also recognize that a lot of people are like, this is not how it was supposed to be. This was not what I was promised or, what I was sold kind of in the beginning. And so I want to forget about it, right? I want to put it away. I want to just move on with my life type of thing. But I feel like at the same time, we also then do a disservice to the next person who's going through that.
Absolutely.
And like for fathers, like I don't think we truly understand what women go through in all of this unless we're in some sort of heightened situation like what I experienced where it's front and center. If you have a quote typical pregnancy or easy pregnancy or whatever, I would assume, and I think it's probably fair to assume, that there's still a lot of thoughts and worry and emotion that the mother is carrying, often in a silent space, that her partner, her family may not be aware of, because society doesn't necessarily say it's okay for you to have those worries, right? Like you should just be happy and do these things and just take pictures with your pregnancy bump and that kind of stuff and do those things, have fun with it, right? Like for us, we had to be guarded in a way that we just couldn't do that kind of stuff. But by all means, no judgment. Do you. But I think it's important that we recognize that this is a lot harder and scarier and a heavy lift for everyone that often I think is probably done in silence more than it should be.
Right. And you hit the nail on the head. I am a fairly private person up until, everything that happened to me. Like I said, having a significant preterm delivery followed by miscarriages. And I sadly was one of those people. I was like, well, you lost a baby at 8 or 9 weeks. That can't be that bad. But when it happened to me, it just changes everything. And it's one of those things too. You just don't realize how common miscarriages or NICU admission or preterm labor delivery is until it happens to you. Then it's funny how some people come out of the woodwork. Then all of a sudden, well, I had a miscarriage or I had a couple of them. It's like, why did you carry this?
That totally happened to us.
So yeah, that's the hard part. It's like if everybody just spoke up and, I always say with the NICU feelings and everything you're going through, like it's okay to talk about it and just more importantly, know that you're not alone because once you start talking about it, you're going to see that you're surrounded by a lot of people that unfortunately just don't open up about it.
I even think in the kind of medical care field where, based on who you're with and sort of maybe what their kind of priorities are or their own professional experiences, like we don't necessarily even talk about this is what could happen. So like,
Right.
I live in California, right? Earthquakes could happen. We have earthquake drills. Like it's what you do. We haven't had a big earthquake in forever, but you still kind of prepare for these things. You're just made aware of it. I knew of a NICU, but that was about it. I knew there was a thing called a NICU. Not like this is what it is and these are the things. And so all of a sudden, when you're put into this, high intensity emergent space and it's just go, 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 right? All of a sudden, very quickly, you're trying to process everything, both logically and emotionally. And it is just, it's a lot.
It is a lot. So, speaking of NICU, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit more about Cooper, I'd
Yeah.
love to hear more about him. I saw his picture on your website, and I mean, he was a handsome fella. And then just reading about him, it was just such a great description. So, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about him.
Yeah. I could probably talk for days and days and days and days about it. Cooper, is a special guy. Still trying to figure out what the verb to use on that one is, but yeah. So he was born at 25 and a half weeks. He was just shy of 2 pounds. So he was a bigger baby for that gestation. He, like I said, so Haley had a placental abruption. We were able to hold off like active labor and delivery for about 2.5, 3 days or so. So that was nice. I was able to get to Denver and then we lived in the hospital for a while. So yes, he was born at 25 and a half weeks. All of a sudden, I can totally remember that delivery scene, right? Where we're in the world's largest room, first and foremost. And then it was like 15 people just they ascend into the room. So you have the complete delivery team and then you have this whole NICU team. I remember one of the first kind of big shocking things because I'm like, okay, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing that. Like that all makes sense. That's fine. We're in a hospital. And they said, don't freak out, but he's going to be placed in a plastic bag. And we're like, okay, that's weird. Like, well, why? You're not understanding. Well, yeah, he has no body fat on him. It's a way to help keep him warm. That totally makes sense, right? But I appreciated them saying that because all of a sudden it's like, wait, why are you putting my son in a bag?
Right.
So just heads up, bag is a thing at certain gestations. But, and then they wheel you off, right? And without a doubt, I was like, I'm coming with you. And I think someone was like, you're coming with it, because they're also really like, you don't really have any choice. They did wheel him over to Haley, so she got to see him before we went over to the NICU, which was on the same floor. But I remember Haley later on she's like, you just left. I was like, absolutely. I'm not just going to have my son go all over the place. So, you're there and it was just, all you just see is a swarm of people, right? And, they're intubating him. And then one of the charge nurses, I remember she was like, here's a notebook and a pen. So like start writing down the questions you have, that kind of thing. And then I went back to Haley because she was still needed to do like the afterbirth type of thing. So then he was kind of there and for a while and until I was like with Haley, and then we went up to kind of recovery. And in recovery, and I'm sharing this because it kind of leads to sort of the work we'll eventually do later, but in recovery, the hospital has this amazing thing. It's called a Newborns in Need program. And so we had this giant blue bag. It was filled with just everything. Like there was a pack of diapers, there was a child book, there was like a mat, there was a blanket, there was baby clothes, lotions, there were resources to the local public library for like what you could check out for books. Plus they actually had on there digitally like nursery rhymes and poems and like audiobooks. So it was really cool. I loved it. It was awesome. But everything in there was not conducive to what we were going to be able to do.
Right.
So we're like, this is awesome. I guess we'll use it in a few months. So that was kind of what it was, right? Because it just showed, I think they just sort of stocked the rooms and they don't know who's coming in. So they just sort of stocked.
Right.
But I share that because that was kind of an inspiration for some of the work we do later. And then that night, once Haley because she ended up having a blood transfusion. So once she was a little bit more, recovered, we had then went down, and that was when we like took our first family picture with him in the isolette. And I remember he was all curled up, and I remember the nurse was like, "We're gonna take a pen and put it next to him, so that way, just because she's like, you're never gonna remember how small he
Right.
was, right?" But like, this is just a reminder of like, and obviously he's curled up, but just how small he was wearing his little beanie, because he was born in February. So, he's a little snowbird. And then, yeah, we were in the hospital until Haley got discharged. And then for us, which was super unique, was we didn't live there. So we had to figure out what does this mean now? I had to check Haley out of her hotel, return the rental car that she had, like all these things. And then we stayed in a hotel for a little bit until we were really fortunate. We found through like a corporate housing website, a fully furnished apartment. And so then we were able to rent that. And then we moved our car out. We had to like have parents I don't remember. I might have gone home. No, I don't think I might have gone home to pick up clothes. I don't remember at this point. But somehow clothes got back to us. And we have a dog, Quincy, right? So we had to bring him out. Like, we literally brought our whole world out there, because our new full-time job was being parents in the NICU. And we were able to do that very fortunately, because Haley worked for herself. So, for her, there was no such thing as like, maternity leave or whatever. So we're still like talking to clients and stuff, like probably 2 or 3 days later after she had him. And then I like never took time off from work. So I had all of this sick time built up. So fortunately, we were both able to essentially be there and it not be a financial hit. But it was one of our very first kind of realizations of all the additional hardships that the NICU can have on families. So the financial strain, the guilt, the presence or lack of presence type of thing, right? So we were very fortunate that we were able to move to a whole other state with all of our things that we needed to have. And like I said, we were there anywhere between 8 and 9 in the morning until like 5 or 6 o'clock at night. Like, that was just our job. Having our dog there helped out, because we absolutely did not want to leave the NICU. Like, we totally get that. And, everyone told us, like, you need to go, like, you need to take care of yourself. But on our mind, we're like, our kid is here, he's sick, like, we need to be, like, this is just what we need to do. So having the dog there was good, because we have a dog door at home, so he's used to freedom. And all of a sudden now he's in an apartment. So like, we had to take him out, so it forced us to leave, and that was a nice kind of break that we didn't realize that sort of he played that role for us. But yeah, so, in the early days, it was kind of, you didn't know, like, can I touch him? Am I going to break him? I remember I think was the first one to change his diaper. Haley definitely was like, because you're lifting legs and things, and you just this little fragile thing, right? So there was a lot of those sort of fears of just not only you're a new parent, but also like you're a new parent with a very fragile child. What does this look like? We held his hand. We at the time he was taking breast milk through like a pump. Haley was pumping, but like, we didn't hold him probably for like a whole week or so, maybe. And part of that was we didn't know that we could ask to do that. I think we subconsciously were just, someone was going to tell us at some point what to do. And we remember we had this nurse who, she was like, have you held him yet? And we said, no. She says, well, do you want to? And you're like, I mean, yes, I do, but like, can I? Like, I don't know. And so we were very appreciative of her, and really kind of stepping into that space of just like asking and kind of advocating for what we didn't realize we needed to advocate for. And he was medically stable enough to do something like that. So that was our first time being able to hold him. And then over the journey of our time in the NICU, I mean, holding him was our most favorite time. I either had like the morning shift or the afternoon shift, and Haley would have the opposite. And then we would just sit there and just hold him. I mean, that was like really the only thing we could do, but it was the thing that we cherished the most. I think we knew how important skin to skin was. We're like, anything we can do to try to make him feel healthy and comfortable, we were going to do that. At day 10 is when they did a cranial ultrasound. And then that's when we discovered that he had 2 IVHs on each ventricle. He had a grade 3 and a grade 4. And I remember hearing that news going, okay. And then I remember kind of the doctor being like, he's so young that like we gotta see if it's gonna figure itself out and what that looks like. We're gonna continue to monitor and do that type of thing. And we did ultrasound periodically when they needed to. There was, daily cranial measurements and that type of thing. But it was just one of the things where like, okay, like it's information, it's data. In my mind and working in education, I kind of knew where this may go. But also like one of the things that I definitely realized, like the role I started playing was this sort of internal optimist, for better or for worse. And so it's kind of like almost kind of the flight attendant mentality, right? Like we're not going to freak out until we need to freak out.